Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 222nd episode of our first YouTube run through the House of Light expansion to Book of Hours, playing as the Archaeologist. And today we are hopefully finishing off the last two books that are currently in our inventory. I, by the way, was under the impression that we needed to get something from Oriflamme's, but obviously we're at the end of the season, so if that was going to happen, it would have come up by now. But right now we're just going to wait for the memories to come in. We will get the lessons from the books. I have a little bit of I have to do a better job of prioritizing the various lessons that memories that I'm getting, just because there's a lot of overlap and I can't rewrite, or excuse me, I can't overwrite certain memories right now. But we should be good. All right, well, we'll put that on the bridge because we've got 30 seconds and I'm going to want to use this to level up some items. I would say, too, as long as I don't have any major holdups, and obviously reading's going to be one of them, I think we can possibly expect to be on to spring by the end of the week. We'll see. No promises, but we'll do our best. All right, so we definitely lost a few things in the memories here. The Journal of Sir David Green, 1903, a confidential journal kept by Green, former Nocturnal Branch Superintendent, but by 1903 Librarian of the House. Green has kept his journal in Hyksos, presumably as an extra measure of privacy. In 1903, the House cooperated closely with the branch, and Green was the public face of that cooperation. In private, however, Green is clearly disillusioned with the branch, which he increasingly regards as irresponsible. He is especially concerned about the construction of a suppressive mechanism beneath Brankrug Jail and its likely occupant. Hours and names are dangerous, he writes, but at least our dealings have the benefit of long experience. An hour who acts before she is born, who leaves those places she has never entered, if her names walk the world already, how can we understand their courses and their capabilities? The last entries alternate between calculations, tides, dates, financial calculations, and expressions of fevered longing for AF. It seems that Green intends to run away with AF, and some of the calculations imply that he has been embezzling funds to that end under the cover of the chaos caused by the Ortuccio incident and the subsequent reorganization of Nocturnal Branch into the Suppression Bureau. The entries, however, stopped abruptly before the year's end. It's not clear whether Green did in fact abscond with the funds and fond friend, or whether he abandoned this journal for other reasons. So there are our sharps lessons. And that gave us a fear. So no room for fear there, and I think... Nope, we're good. An Introduction to the Histories. The 17th century mystic and antiquarian Claude Hersault describes divergent incidents in 5 major histories. The prologue warns at length of the iniquities of one Julian Cosley, a former colleague who Hersault now describes darkly as a worm of worms. It seems Cosley advised Hersault early in the writing of the book, but Hersault later became suspicious. Hersault identifies blood, silver, design, and the worms as the central axes of each of the histories, and claims that the so-called second history is the true one. Whoops. Emiranis Spitalis, a fragment of iron alloy meteorite carefully inscribed and polished. This object houses a numen, a truth so powerful it can perhaps believe itself. Who gave us fire? Who gave us steel? What is the sound of dusk? Of what alloy is wind forged? Esoteric secrets of metallurgy and resonance are revealed, including directions towards the creation of a terrible bell. The bells of Yes. Yes, by her arts, found the strike tone that shakes the hours. For this reason, among many, the hours discouraged traffic with Yes, but a bell cast with this secret could speak the Yes note. Any librarian can establish this history and complete the game, but the prodigal and the revolutionary can win a particular victory. So I'll make a note. I actually forgot that this one had edge as well. It is written, Musgrave, fourth of the De Wolf line, writes tentatively about the covenant of Brankrug and the legacy of the sacred inks he calls incausta potentialia. As a light passeth through a prism into many colours, so the great inks separateth into the lesser inks, and the lesser inks into inks minor. Musgrave coyly refuses to talk of the great inks, or else refuses to admit he doesn't know much about them. He insists that Ugol and Stargol, which can be mixed with sufficient nectar or sky aspect, are sufficient for most befitting purposes. This was not one I was ready to move on yet, so... The Locksmith's Dream, A Light Through the Keyhole. The first volume of Teresa Galmier's examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans. The parallels in mystic dreams are experienced by carpenters, masons, and other artisans, and what they purport to reveal about the architecture of the world. Surprisingly mordant and even funny, no one has ever explained why Galmier devoted herself to this chaotic exploration of artisans' dreams. Time and again we hear of the wood which rises from the world's foundation. All trees reach for light. What does the wood reach for? Is there a difference between light and light? I think the key to dreams of the wood may be one of these, the one that isn't exactly real. Apollo and Marsyas, the libretto of a lost opera concerning the contest between Apollo and Marsyas and its tragic outcome. The librettist is identified only by their initials. In the original myth, Marsyas lost the musical contest and was flayed by Apollo, who later regretted it. In this version, Marsyas' skin has a further history. The skin of Marsyas gives oracles and is later smuggled to Phrygia, where the priestesses of Cybele use it for a drum. At the climax, the striking of the drum drives would-be violators of the priestess to suicidal madness. The opera ends with a wistful hymn from the youngest priestess on the beauty of mountain pines. The Rose of Hypatia, a volume of collected teachings of the Sisterhood of the Knot by that arcane contemplative order that existed in all histories, but in some was very powerful indeed. This was recorded by Hypatia and dedicated to Saint Nympha. Saint Nympha is described as not born but cultivated, the sentience that became a saint. Hypatia indicates, the sentience that became the saint, Hypatia indicates, inhabited a sinner's corpse in order to enable that sinner's redemption. Not all the dead enter the mansus by the winter door. Not all the dead enter the mansus at all. Better now. And The Crossing to Noon, the mystic Garcia Sauri gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. For a long time, the Blackbone pondered her next move, until the moon dared to peep from behind a cloud, and the prince completed the composition of his third sestina. But the lady met the blind gaze of its open pores, waiting for the tide. Garcia Sauri acknowledges in an epilogue that it is widely known that Ava in fact tragically drowned herself and her twin infant granddaughters without ever making such a journey. But he adds contemptuously, it is also widely known that the city unbuilt will so remain, that only one history is ever written, and that Janus is a mansus prank. Alright, now I want to take a second here to check. So what I could do on this one, we've got 4 of the required 4 of the required 6 for Ragged Crossroads. So one thing I could do here is move the Regret down and replace that with the Bells of Yes. And then I could add the Hail. Yeah, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And in fact, better still, I can go to the shore. If I cast an object into the sea, it will be lost, perhaps irretrievably. Okay, so we want to level up Anbury and Lapidary, which realistically is... Okay, so if I just focus on music, I can already get the 6 there, so that's not a challenge. So it's really... Yeah. Okay, so we'll move the regret down here. Okay, Whist for Ragged Crossroads. Metal for Anbury and Lapidary. And Phos for Pyroglyphics. So 1... Let's do Opening the Sky for this one. 2. And then we'll get the Beguiling Melody from... Collar's phonograph. Did I use up all the FET? I guess I did. Okay, so that should be 3 as far as music is concerned, which would be sufficient to level up Anbury and Lapidary. So now our focus is going to be on Pyroglyphics. The easiest thing I can do would be to start with... it would be to start with the Forge. So I think we're on to Deoris now. So we have 3 of 6. Four of 6. We already have Regret. So I would take Bittersweet Certainty. Five of 6. And alas, I think I'm short... I think I'm short a lantern. So, from that, I will go to Ambrose's desk. Actually, there is another thing I can do here, but let's do Shuridic Book of Suns, add Deep Mad Dayak, and I believe that should take care of my... I think that should take care of my... the lessons that I need. I was actually going to get the next... I was going to try and get the next treasure of the house, but I'm going to wait on that for a moment. It'd just be nice if I could make it a little bit closer in proximity to the to one of the texts that gives you the hint on how to solve it. So this last treasure of the house actually was the one book, the one Newman that I didn't have in my first playthrough. It was something that I needed a second playthrough to be able to find. Okay, so the Ragged Crossroads, we'll put all our items in here. I said I was going to use the Whist. When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. Improve the skill to level 7. And it's pretty straightforward at this point. We've got, we actually have quite a bit of what we need already, so we're really just filling in these last couple of gaps. But I imagine, just because it's 30 seconds a piece and we need to read the books and such, we're going to be pretty close, I would expect, to the end of the day. In fact, so much so that I think I'm just going to sneak a trip to Crowcross Sands. Now, of course, I still have the container to open, and I have these 3 down below here, so I am eager to finish this off, but as far as I'm concerned, anything with sort of lessons and memories gets the first priority. Unhatched hymns attributed to St. Lucia the Eyeless, patron of glassworkers and name of the hour called Meniscate. The hymns venerate every sanctioned hour, celebrating them as the sun undivided, but also suggesting that each hour may become the next, madrigad to watchman, watchman to wolf, and so on. The hymn of the phases celebrates the Meniscate from whom we do not turn, for the truth which is beauty, the beauty which is truth, and the perfect balance between the two. The hymn of the reflections, more puzzlingly, celebrates the Meniscate as the sister of Janus, mother of shadow, whose visage wondrous in emptiness can reveal all truths. Deoris, in Latin, a 19th century reprint by the indefatigable Nathaniel Darcy Evers of a 14th century Latin translation of a 4th century work. This volume deals mostly with the hour called Lionsmith, the hour called the Tribune of Scars, and with their enmity. The Lionsmith makes monsters to defeat the Tribune, but the scars of the Tribune are each a weapon. Opening the Sky. An unusual recording of Varro's Opening the Sky, composed for the coronation of the new king, Henry IX. The record bears the suppression stamp Expunge. The first movement is soft, autumnal. The second, unsettling, febrile. The third is bright, soaring, rapturous. The fourth movement is glassy, slithering, a tintinnabulous icicle rattle. The fifth returns to the theme of the third, bright and rapturous once again, but this is a choral movement. It becomes apparent, though, that these are much, much too pure and high to be human voices. They recall birdsong, they recall the sweep of the windswept sky, blue turning black at the edge of the higher heaven, and they wrench the heart in a direction that the Bureau does not permit. The Shuridic Book of Suns, a radically different text from any of the other versions of the Book of Suns attributed to Hagar, Queen of Shur, Mother of Wolves. Set down with reverence before the intercalate by one who understood what would come to pass. Apocryphal chapters foretell the means by which the sun and splendor and the forge might circumvent the impossibility of their joining through proxies that are in some sense themselves. The sun and splendor and the forge of days could not be joined, but Sunset Celia and the Swan King could. This secret is the trick of it. Musgrave Sketches. Musgrave, 4th Baron Brankrug, was widely mocked as the Bleating Baron and the Lamb de Wolf, but these sketches reveal a complex, somber inner life. Art begins in colors, grows dappled, finally is either mostly darkness or mostly light. Musgrave discusses the temptation of the perfectly minimal palest painting. He has so far managed to resist this temptation, but does guiltily describe success in using sights and sensations with winter aspect to create first a chilly elixir from flowers, which he believes he can refine further into a final pigment. The Lake Fusino recordings of the folk dances of the Fusine marshes, the wailing of flutes, the roaring of drums, cries like birds lost in the marshes. These are the songs the sisters sang to the witch, that the Thunderskin roared to the sky, the songs with which the Dwendrazones of the Mansis keep their vigil. Once heard, they are not forgotten. The Radical Measure. Manifesto for experimental and dangerous-sounding invocatory poetry written sometime in the 19th century by Dr. Aaron Peel. A notoriously inconsistent and incoherent text, apparently produced in a tearing hurry. The hours have little time for poetry, Dr. Peel avers, but they have a tremendous amount of time for poets. As the rose opens, Dr. Peel explains, an enduring memory opens to the horizon. This is a way of saying something that cannot otherwise be said, and is best only written with one's eyes firmly closed. So we've got the pieces we need. Now we just need to commit them to the skills. Oops. There we go. And then again, from there we'll take the containers and open them up. We should get through, I think, 2. I'm mostly just happy that I got through these lessons. It's a little funny, like the Salons are going to be weird just because I don't exactly want to have a collection of like level 9 skills, but if I keep doing big Salons, like there's only one way for the lessons to go, right? So all right, so yeah, 30 seconds, we will open the... Oh, you know what? I might have been wrong. We may only have time to open the abandoned luggage, which is fine, because then that just means we have something to look forward to in a future episode for plundering the vault. It is the last room of the house, so... Now, it's maybe worth saying, some of you may be brand new to Book of Hours and haven't necessarily got to this point yourself. One of the things I should stress is that this doesn't necessarily mean you're done with the house. It may be that there are no more rooms for you to explore, but very often there can be either things that you haven't noticed before. Getting David Green's journal is a great example of that. But if we consider this playthrough alone, right, I haven't put all the statues on their various pedestals. So that would be, or the busts on the in their niches. So that's one option that I have there. And then on top of that, because this game is, there's the exploration, there's the crafting and such, much like reading the books over and over can give you a little bit more information than you would. Again, that's my preference compared to consulting online sources, because that just invites the question, it's like, well, where did they find that stuff? It is through going through the house and exploring things. That's going to be how you learn those things, and more importantly, especially some of the early stuff in the game, what you may find is that you had some assumptions about what certain things meant at the start of the game, and those assumptions have been challenged, and you think differently about things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you've gone back to all of these other rooms and applied your new knowledge towards them. And so it's less obvious than reading books, because books, once you understand that you can get a memory from reading them again, I think it's very natural to read and reread, and that's how you're able to get the most out of the information that's inside of them. Whereas, the books or the statues or things, unless you have a direct reason to be doing those kinds of interactions, it's easy to overlook them. So we'll be doing a little bit of that here. I don't know if I'll be doing a ton of it. But again, the point I really want to stress here is that it doesn't hurt to keep reading books anyway. But even within the rooms, right, for those of you who are, you know, like, I understand I've got a little bit of a weird obsession with not reading wikis. There's some reasons for that, but it's just not interesting. That's just a me thing, so I try not to elaborate too much. But the big one for me would just be that, you know, so to me the question would be like, if you're like, well, you know, well, why, I hear you, but like I want to know the information and I just can't seem to find it other than the wiki. And of course the answer to that is you find it by going through this earlier stuff. Like each of these individual items can be examined and you can actually learn a little bit more. And then when you combine that with things like the letters in the game, and I'm actually specifically thinking of Nina Lagase's letter, the one that wasn't in that original batch. You know, you get new information about the game either through the books or through the, you know, through the Weather Factory articles. There's lots of different ways to find out new things. And again, because that colors your understanding, you get more out of even earlier game content because you now have this better understanding of what was going on. So for instance, when we started off in these rooms here, we didn't know what the fire was. By the time we get here, we have a pretty clear idea in terms of what the fire was and why it happened. Another I actually don't even remember. Right, I got the parchment from that. Okay. But yeah, right now we'll see what the season brings. Still no Numa. Current affairs. What's happening in the world beyond Brandkrug? What visitors will the season bring? Yearly stipend. The yearly stipend from St. Ronwin's has arrived, along with the usual rather sniffy reminder that I should spend it wisely. Okay, so it's a little early. I normally like to do half-hour episodes, and I definitely will err on the side of longer than shorter, but this actually feels like quite a good time to wrap it up. I also need to finish my laundry. So I'm going to leave it here. What we should expect in the spring, on top of the stipend, of course, we should get a new event. And of course, because we've been doing this new approach where we've tried to bring in as many guests as we have sort of the aspects for, we'll run through that quite quickly. And then, I mean, I guess at that point it's really just a question of waiting for the season to finish. But in this spring, I think what we'll do is we'll start finishing up a few of the unfinished tasks. Some of this will be leveling things up to get, you know, the higher level, you know, like a core 3+, for instance. We will, I think, what do I want to do? Let's, yeah, so I can see leveling up the elements of the soul. I can see dealing with the remaining busts. And then I guess depending on what the event is, we'll make some other decisions from there. But all of that will happen in future episodes. So thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.